I, of course, wanted to pop on my webcam just for an introduction here so you guys can all see me and, talk about what we're going to cover today and really get into, I guess, pulling models from the cloud, Edgewise to Revit. And again, we're going to kind of focus on a scan to BIM workflow for this webinar. So I am David Campbell, and I'm going to go ahead and turn off my camera here and let's get started. So with today's agenda, I wanted to get into what is Edgewise. So what is this kind of scan to BIM kind of solution? What is what does that mean, right? What does that scan to BIM mean? Also, I want to get into a introduction or kind of overview of Edgewise. So I'm going to show you all the interface of Edgewise. We're going to learn how to navigate it a little bit, talk about the different types of models that Edgewise pulls in and utilizes, and kind of how it extracts information from these scans. And then we'll go into, of course, exporting that all out to Revit, and then, of course, wrap up with a Q&A. So a little bit about us, Topcon Solutions. We are the retail division to Topcon Positioning Systems. We are a complete solutions provider. So in kind of talking about today's webinar, Topcon, Solutions does allow us, all of us, I guess, to kind of get the full picture of this workflow in the sense of we have our hardware, our scanners, right? And we know that they're going to give us that point file that we need to essentially combine and then run through something like this program, Edgewise. Now, Topcon Solutions is prepared to kind of support the full workflow as, again, we're talking about today in terms of, showing this, supporting it, and training for it, not just in the sense of the software, but the actual full workflow, hardware to software and deliverable. We offer a complete office software solution through partnerships with Autodesk and Bluebeam as well. And then we have industry-leading training and technical support. So I kind of talked about the training there. We also do have our field teams who help go out and troubleshoot if you do have any issues with your equipment or you're trying to figure things out. We have local field teams that are ready to go to help you out. And we do have the widest range of everyday field supplies and accessories. A little bit more about us is that we have 13 brick and mortar locations, and we are currently in 20 states, including Washington, DC. And right now we're sitting at about 180 employees, and we are growing. So again, my name is David Campbell. I'm an application specialist with Topcon Solutions. I get into a little bit of everything in terms of Revit design, BIM, kind of CAD, BIM 360, scanning, Edgewise, Verity, a lot of different workflows. So that's really why I really wanted to give this presentation today to talk about a little bit of what benefits we would get from utilizing something like, of course, is Edgewise. What is Edgewise? So I've had quite a bit of conversations about this. So I'm going to jump over into the Edgewise interface. I like to stay in the program for the most part. We won't do too much death by PowerPoint for this webinar. In terms of what Edgewise is, I'm sure as you guys can guess, we're pulling models from the cloud to Revit. So this, of course, is a type of scan to BIM software. And what we're looking at essentially is that Edgewise, it can either pull in the overall individual scan position. So if you do have your individual scans, you can pull those in, or you can utilize like an RCP. Now, the RCP is a recap project, right? What I want to emphasize there with the recap project portion is that if you go to bring any of those recap scans in, like your recap project, make sure that it is ununified. It's not unified. You want to be able to see those different scan locations, like those bubbles in your scan, because that's really what Edgewise is going to utilize when it's actually translating a lot of this data from these point clouds. Now, you're going to get, when we first get into Edgewise, you'll notice I have Edgewise 5.6. So they have had the updates kind of recently to optimize the translation of point clouds. I mean, they've done a lot of different things. They've added the cable tray capability and things like that. But for Topcon specific, I was pretty happy to see that they actually did they did tweak it to optimize the integration between something like the GTL 1000, which is our robotic kind of total station scanner, and the GLS 2000. They optimize the data for that GTL so we can take the quick kind of measured total station scans, but we can also bring those in here. We have the right density. We can of course specify our tolerances to give us this model that we're going to utilize. Right now, I did say a key word in there, and that's going to be density. So what we're looking at with a program like Edgewise, excuse me, is that you really want to get some dense point cloud data. You want to be able to let it see, kind of what is there, and make sure that we have enough to kind of make these complex shapes, this geometry that we're going to make in terms of pipes or structure or buildings, right? We're pulling out walls and things like that. So getting into it, I'm going to go ahead and talk about a little bit of what navigating Edgewise kind of looks like. So I'm completely starting from new here. Typically, you would go ahead and go through what's called the process scans. That's going to be one of your first steps, right? And we're looking at the structured workflow, an unstructured workflow, or a point database workflow. Now, the structured and unstructured, you'll see that it lists everything that it will give us in terms of our point database creation, the automatic wall model extraction, automatic pipe model extraction, and ground surface extraction. Now, of course, this will work off of these file types down below, the DP, the E57, FLS. There's our RCP right there. Now, if you're utilizing something like an XYZ file, that might be where you go with your unstructured workflow here, and you're going to be able to create that automatic, point database creation and the automatic wall model extraction. Now, I'm going to go ahead and go with the structured workflow here, and I can grab. You can see I can grab like any types of files in that list, whether they're, again, FLS, they're RCPs, what have you. And essentially, when we bring this up, I'm just going to hit open here. You're going to see that this is how we create our different types of models for Edgewise. So I want to go into my documents here real quick and show you guys something pretty cool. When we get into Edgewise, let's say I'm going to go into my industrial plant because this is what I was going to use for today's demo. You're going to see, of course, I have a lot of different files in here, but I have some RVTs. Okay, so this is what I wanted to point out: the C3M, C3 struct, the C3 DB right here, okay, and then the C3 BLDG. These are different types of models that Edgewise creates and kind of manages. So you're going to see your point database. That's the C3, DP or PD. And then we have our BLDG file, our piping, which is the C3M, and then our ground file. So what we're looking at, again, it needs the point database. So we know that the point database here, like in order for Edgewise to go through the proper steps, it needs to run through the point database first. And what that's going to do is actually recreate the point file here within Edgewise. And you're going to see that you can specify your scanner range. You can even get into the point spacing if you want to. For the building itself, do you want to automatically extract your wall models? So in this case, Edgewise is going to do this automatically. Now, what we're looking at here is the time that it takes to actually extract all of that data, right? So it's great that it does it automatic, but how long is it going to sit here to give me the data that I need? So in this case, do we need the walls? Okay, if we don't, we can uncheck that, right? So we can turn that off. Piping, do I want to extract my piping models? And then do I want to specify what I'm looking for in terms of and filtering that data, right? Do I want to minimize my false positives or maximize my number of extractions? So in other words, do you want to do more QA afterwards, or do you want to maybe go back and see, we want to make sure that we get all of the extremely, positive connections in terms of pipes in this case, and I can go do and go through and do a physical kind of extraction or a manual extraction afterwards, I feel like there would be less data or less time spent there, or you get it. We can kind of filter that out to go either way. Now, in this sense, once we specify the different types of models that we want, Edgewise is going to go ahead and create these models and start populating them here in our model selection pane. Now, I've already got these built, so I'm going to start pulling these in one by one to show you guys what these are. And I'm going to start with the database. So as I said earlier, the database essentially recreates that point file inside of Edgewise. So we're going to see that I have a nice industrial plant here. I have some good piping right in here. Now you're going to see there is some spacing in this this data, right? I mean, a lot of this isn't perfect. And we all know that a lot of our scans are not going to be 100% perfect all the time. Now, I mean, if you are awesome, you can definitely strive for that. And I mean, the more scans you get, the more dense data you're going to do, the longer you're going to stay on site. So it's, of course, a balancing act there, as we all know. But again, navigating around this point file, we can see that there's a lot of good dense data in here for our pipes, right? So for this model specifically, I'm going to go ahead and bring in my piping model. Now, we're going to see a couple different things. It says industrial plant complete components. I did actually break mine down in terms of before cleaning, before connections, and things like that, so we can see, again, kind of the difference in these stages with what Edgewise does. And the reason I'm going to go with a before connections and before clean is because this is essentially just like letting Edgewise run through its algorithms, translating the point data before I've done anything to clean it up or add connections or anything like that. This is what you get. So we're going to see that we get quite a bit of these pipes here in this pipe run. Now you'll notice again, it is breaking them up, right? Because in some points, sorry, let me get back over here. In some points, we might not get that really good dense data where Edgewise wants to create that pipe for us. Now, of course, Edgewise does have awesome extraction tools, which I kind of talked about that earlier in terms of manually extracting some points, and you can draw an actual polygon around any of these points areas here. Let me try to zoom in a little bit more. There we go. Let's see if I can find a good one here. You know what, actually, I'm just going to go ahead and delete one, and then we can kind of see how that works. So I'm going to delete this one here. Edit, grab you, delete. And then to extract, we go ahead and essentially just draw around the area that we want to essentially extract for that pipe. And you see what you'll do is you'll draw that polygon around it, and then you'll double click to end it, and then it brings your pipe out. Now, this is going to be the same kind of case for structure, which I'll go into that a little bit more here in a second. But you're going to see that essentially, you can go through and either manually translate that data, or again, let Edgewise kind of go through it for you. Now, some of you are also wondering, like, okay, how does it do it? And how is it sizing these pipes? What did it size them at? So we can go ahead and check out the smart sheet info, either the part info or the chain info, which right now they're all broken into parts anyways. But essentially, what we can see in this part info is what diameter it is assigning these different types of pipes based off of the raw point cloud data, okay? We do have a slider here, and we can also go through and refit these. I'm gonna go into QC mode here real quick. Bring this back over. And in this, you'll be able to see exactly how Edgewise is kind of sizing this pipe to the point cloud itself. So we see our little kind of color chart here letting us know where the radius kind of hits in terms of, again, how it's sizing the radius and the diameter of this pipe based on the colorization or how this pipe is touching these points. Okay, So that's really what it's doing. It's looking for a dense group of point clouds, or well, points in these point clouds, and it essentially tries to mimic or translate that point cloud into geometry, right? Which is a common scan to BIM kind of feature. That's what we're looking for. Now, the interesting thing about Edgewise, this is where you're going to start seeing a little bit of separation, right? In terms of what Edgewise gives you, once I scroll right into the part info here, I can see that this has a type and a subtype. So right there, we're automatically starting to get into characterizing these as, you know, parametric kind of elements. We're capable of adding more information in with these. Okay. Now, another interesting thing I like about these pipes and the piping systems, and I'll go more into depth with it here in a second, but is the fact that we can go ahead and apply standards. So we can actually standardize this full model, whether you want to go off ASME, you have conduit, your different types of piping, whether it's going to be PVC, anything like that. If you want to choose your specific pressure rating, you can essentially apply that standard as a whole over all of these pipes and then just automatically set them when you're going to export them out. Okay, now the other thing I wanted to talk about is connecting these things, right? That would be one big thing to go through and try to manually go through and connect all of these different pipes. They made it very easy with this program with an easy connect here. Now this is where we can specify if we want to utilize only high confidence connections, you know, or if we want to specify a diameter variance in terms of how big are we willing to kind of let it go before we don't, or small, do we want to let it go before it no longer makes it a connection. Once I say okay, you're going to see it run through and automatically connect all of our different pipe runs here. And there we go. Now, it'll notice that you know, these pipes have essentially kind of connected together, but it's also still noticing that they're not individual pipe runs. They're just parts, they're pieces. So one good thing that I really like to do, and again, this is kind of going in the order of things, but I want to clean these pipes, okay? And in this sense, I'm just going to go ahead and hit continue, but it's going to significantly alter my model in the sense of all of these individual pieces are now going to be kind of joined into one. Okay, you'll see what I mean here in a second. And this is actually where that smart sheet chain info is going to come into play. After we connect a lot of these pipes together, at that point, so here you'll see the straight runs, it connects, it still leaves our elbows and things like that, but it's just going to merge these all into individual kind of pipe runs there. And when I go into my chain info, now I can start seeing, you know, again, the diameter, the NPS, if I need to refit it, have I approved it, my pressure rating, I haven't set my standard yet there, the uninsulated diameter, but here's the big thing too, Revit family. Now, in terms of creating a piping model and specifying the Revit family, this is going to be quite important because if you are looking at conduit, if you're looking at duct, anything like that, we can go ahead and specify here. So when we do send this over to Revit, it knows what it's going to be, okay? So I'll go ahead and get out of that chain info for now. So that's the piping model. I mean, there's a lot of functionality here in terms of adding flanges, adding valves, adding your own connectors. Like it is a very powerful part of this program. But there's also another portion of this I want to show you guys. So I'm going to go back into open model and I want to bring in my structural model. All right, so this one has already been done as well. I've done a lot of this through here. I'll kind of show a pattern extraction here in a second. But what I wanted to kind of show off here is that, again, Edgewise is looking at sizing these structural elements based off of the point cloud. Now, what you'll kind of notice is that structure does not have an automated extraction. So I mean, it does, but it doesn't in that sense. Let me clarify that. You notice that structure didn't have a tab at the beginning. It was building, pipe, ground, and point database. There was no structure there, okay? Structure is done actually through this structural tab here, this is where we can specify the type of structural element that we want to utilize or that we're going to use or reference here. Whether it's AISC version 2 or it's concrete or it's wood, what have you, we can go ahead and use the extraction tool, which is going to be much like what I utilized earlier on the pipe. Now let me grab this one here. I'm going to hit delete. And I know it got that one wrong, which is why I'm picking on this one, just because it put was a W wide flange in there. There we go. Now, a tip here for any of you kind of looking at this, for the extraction, if I'm going to pull this structural element and really get the point cloud to size correctly, especially if I'm missing something, so they didn't really take another scan on the back here and I'm kind of missing the back of that column, what I like to do is get a really good view in terms of like a three-dimensional kind of view on this and get a good angle on it, so I can go all the way around this element and kind of bring it so it knows, I'm going to double click here, where to look for this element. Now, that one was not right either, so I'm going to try that again. And this is actually not steel, that'd be why. So let's go ahead and select concrete, and we are going to use rectangular. That was my fault. So we're going to try this one again. But you're seeing that I'm just dragging it up and around it here and just kind of telling it where I want it to go. And you'll notice that I'm also not doing the entire thing. You don't have to in this sense. You'll notice that I can just do the bottom portion and then I can drag this up. Now I noticed that this one has a corbel on it here. So I would probably try to follow that around at least, and then take the rest of this portion up. But in this sense here, I can go ahead and take it up right to the roof, okay? Oh, let me hit escape there. Grabbed a hold of it and moved it. So there it's going ahead and it filled in the point cloud. It auto fit to what it found was the extents of the point cloud data, like the density itself. Now, what else I wanted to kind of show you guys, let me bring this one up just a little bit more here, okay? They have a tool called the patterned extract. So that manual extraction it's not bad, and it's great to give us an example of what's there. But I don't want to have to do that for every single one of these columns. So what I like to do is utilize this patterned select. So at this point, what I can do is select my elements. So I can go 1, 2, and then 3. And if I click down the line, what Edgewise will do, which I probably need to run that one again, but what Edgewise will do is recognize a pattern between these two elements, between essentially all of this point cloud data, and start filling in that pattern. So I'm gonna hit escape off of that one real quick. I'm gonna grab this one, patterned extract, 1, 2, 3. I am not getting that one. Oh, pattern select, that'd be why I'm using pattern extract. Okay, let me make sure I got the same thing going here. 1, 2, 3. You know what's interesting? There it goes. Okay, looks like it skipped that one, but it brought those two in for me. So I might Control Z. It looks like, what's funny too is that it reads the distances here. So I could be wrong with the size of the column, or I actually probably should have just went 1, 2, and then 3, double clicked on this. There's several different ways to actually do the pattern extract itself. As I was saying, you can do 1, 2, 3, and then you essentially click on the elements that are there, and it reads the differences between them to kind of make a bay, and then it goes down and calculates and keeps kind of going. Or you say 1, 2, and then you click the third time in the direction that you want to go, and then Edgewise will try to read the point cloud itself. All right. So that is bringing out our structural elements, okay? Now the building, you'll notice again, if we wanted walls, it does do that automatically. I will go ahead and open that one up as well. What's nice about the walls when we go to bring these into Revit is that Edgewise will actually typically go through and it'll try to mimic the wall exactly as it is. Now this one, it hasn't given me any of these walls yet. So if I go into building, oh, I don't have my levels yet. So this is good anyways. So essentially with, actually this is actually another important part. I almost skipped over this. Levels, right? So going into Revit and knowing at what height or your levels are of even like these pipes here of our walls, of our structural elements can be very beneficial. So in this case, maybe I want to go ahead and select, I'll select the top of my structure, which it grabbed the pipes, so that's perfect. And then I will go ahead and grab the top here. Actually, I'll just grab this one over here because we know that's the roof. There we go. So I now have 3 levels. Actually, yeah. I now have 3 levels to bring into Revit, okay? And after I've got my levels, now you'll see that find walls and extract wall, it populates. So it's always looking for the levels first, and then it'll kind of go through, and there you're seeing it starts generating our walls. Now I didn't need these, so I'm gonna go ahead and clean this up here in a second. Modify wall. I'm gonna go ahead and delete these out of there. All right. I'm going to turn these levels off for a second. So there it is. Now, I'm sure some of you are probably pretty curious as to what the export process looks like, right? All right, great, Dave, we have this information in terms of our walls, our levels, you know, our pipes, all that kind of stuff. How do we get this to Revit at this point? Well, what we would do is we'd go back to this File tab, and you're going to see a nice little button here, Export to Revit. And yes, it is that simple. Now, the interesting thing to think about here is that I'm only exporting one model at a time. So it's exporting the active model to Revit. So in this case, if I want to send my pipes, this is where I go, Export to Revit. Now it's telling me I need to clean this up a little bit more because there are some segments that are too short to import into Revit. So that's fine. But essentially I can go ahead and save this right here, merged pipe before connections. Now I'm not gonna do that one because I already have one of these made. So I'm just gonna go ahead and hit cancel here. But that is the export process. Now you'll also notice that you don't have to go to Revit. If you want to go to AutoCAD, you want to take these out to CAD, you can. MicroStation, PCF, Plant 3D, Smart Center. If you just want to take the center lines, if you want to take the routing lines, things like that, you can actually export these out as DXFs. And we can also export out our remainder cloud. So the point cloud database kind of data here in the back, if you wanted to export that out, you can do that as well. So in that case, I think I forgot to start Revit this morning. So I'm gonna go ahead and let that go for a second so I can get that up so I can show you guys the import process. Now, while I'm doing that, do we have any questions at this point?
We do, David, so I will quickly go over some of the questions that we have received. And just as a reminder, for anyone who does have questions, feel free to insert those into the questions pane located on your GoToWebinar control panel. So the first question that we did receive, David, is does point cloud file size or number of points affect speed? David mentioned dense clouds are better, but denser clouds are larger. What density range are we talking about?
That's a very, very, very good question. Yes, I mean, the larger your point cloud, the longer that it is going to take to process, so yes. But also that's kind of where we're looking at the ununified data and kind of looking at how we can either chunk these point clouds in terms of, you know, breaking it down in recap and then actually bringing it in performing a section of it and then inserting that into Revit essentially, and doing chunks like that to like kind of help that processing time. Because you're right, I mean, if you get big models, let's say wastewater treatment facilities or anything like that with a lot of pipes running through it, and you do get that dense data, it's going to take a while to process. Now, I will tell you that I've actually processed 2 wastewater treatment facilities, and like we did chunk it in a way, but I pushed it a little bit in terms of the size, and I found that I ended up doing it overnight. At the end of the day, I put everything in there, got everything ready, let it go, and by the next morning, it was ready to go. My model was there. So you gotta, I mean, what I'm looking at here is the time that it would take of modeling, in that amount of data, how long that would take versus letting Edgewise process it. But going back to your question, you would need that dense data. But yeah, you're right. I mean, it can take a while to process these point clouds. So chunking them really is a lot of what I found helps, especially with bigger scans in general, getting them into recap, breaking them down into pieces, processing it, and doing that type of stuff. It helps a lot with that. It still helps you get the good dense data that you need, but it helps it with the processing time as well.
Okay, thank you so much for that question. We do have another one. Do you manage coordinate systems in Edgewise?
No, we do not manage coordinate systems in Edgewise. I mean, what I would see is that the coordinate system from the scan, I've heard at least that it does take it. I don't know exactly. That's something I might have to get back to you on. I probably have to call my guys at ClearEdge and a couple of my guys on my tech team and see what we can figure out about the coordinate system, because I'm curious about that as well. Edgewise does not deal with them in terms of letting me manage them, but I'm curious about whether it does. I'm curious about whether it does translate that data to Revit. If when we push it through, if it'll keep the actual coordinate system from the scan. So that is a great question, Diana. If I could get back to them after the webinar.
Okay, certainly. And we do have their information, so we will get back to you as soon as we can. All right, we do have more questions, but first I want to check back in with you, David, to see if you want to move forward with your presentation and
Yeah,
then,
yep. I'll go
okay,
ahead and move forward here, and then I'll get back to those here in a second. So
okay.
I'm going to go ahead and create a new model, and I'm just going to start with the architectural template. It's pretty basic. All right, so when you download Edgewise, you're going to notice that you will get an add-in into Revit for the Edgewise import. So it does have its own tab, and in that case, we can go ahead and open our model. So you just click Open Model here. You find the one that you want. So if I grab the, I know that this one is my piping model here. Oh, great. Oh, well, you know what? I'm going to grab another one then, because I forgot about that one. There we go. I kind of enjoy watching this because it reminds me of an Etch-a-Sketch, but essentially what you're going to see is it's going to start to go through, draw all of our different piping systems in and things like that to really bring it all together for us. Now, the thing I really enjoy about this, I know it takes a second to bring all of these in. The thing I really like about this is that essentially it brings all of these elements in as fully parametric elements. So they are Revit families. There we go. Now I do have to warn you guys that I do have the NFR version of this, so it is the not for resale. Just means that I can only bring in a certain amount of items. I cannot bring in the full amount. But in the sense, you'll notice that all of these pipes have been brought in. Now I did need to do some cleanup, not gonna lie, before I brought that one out of there. But you're gonna see that it comes in as specific pipe. If you did standardize it before you bring it in, it would go ahead and essentially apply any of those standards to this pipe. When it does come in, you're gonna have the elevations, you're gonna have all of the diameter information, you're gonna have it tied to a system type if you want to, what kind of material it is, and essentially we can just go through and tweak them in Revit. If we have fabrication or we have specific elements that we want to go ahead and bring in, we just change those elements here. Now I can also, let's grab my structural. You're going to see that it just starts applying our structural elements from that structural model. All right, so while that's drawing, Diana, do you want to go ahead and do we have any other questions then?
Yes, we do. Okay, so is there a way to do an automated check of the point cloud to figure out where the voids/hidden sides are so that you can take a few additional scans to get a better model out of Edgewise?
That's actually a good question. I don't think so. I know that depending on the scanner that you're using, some of them will pop up and give you like the image of what your complete scan looks like, and it'll actually tell you like I know the GLS and the GTL, they have some like blue on them, and I can point to those areas and kind of have it do a rescan of that area if it knows it didn't get it that well. What I would say would help you there is probably planning. Like what I like doing is if you can get an idea of the layout of the building and get an idea of how you want to plan your setups, right? Because obviously we don't want to do too many setups, but we want to do enough to where we get all of the data that is going to be good enough to bring into something like Edgewise or even Revit for that matter. We want to be able to see it. We don't need these big holes and gaps in it, right? So one, looking at the scanner that you're using and just viewing that scan before you finish it and store it before you essentially break down, go to your next setup point. But also getting back to planning, like looking at these problem areas, like what do you want to concentrate on? What are you trying to take into Edgewise? Is it going to be this complex piping system? Is it going to be this structure? Or is it going to be these pumps or whatever it is? At that point, you want to kind of look at, okay, I know my scanner is going to be able to get from here to here, kind of line of sight, right? And that's where we can go ahead and start planning. Like I know that I need 2 or 3 setups to get all of this information for this specific element or this room, what have you. And when you get that plan down, it's, I mean, honestly, that for me personally, that has been very helpful, especially when bringing things into recap and then into Edgewise, just because at that point I can see it all come together in Edgewise or in recap. Of course, stitching it all together, but again, verifying if I do have any holes or areas that I do need to, probably try to densen up or anything like that. Unfortunately, I don't think we have anything that does it out of the box. It might be interesting to look at an add-in and see if there are any add-ins out there that might.
Well, thank you very much for that answer, David, and thank you for that question. The only other quick question here that I can actually answer that was asked is this being recorded? So just as a friendly reminder, it is, and it will be available for reference later on today. So if you do have any other questions at this point, feel free to insert those into the questions pane. But for right now, that is all that we have, David, so thank you.
All right, so in conclusion, Edgewise is a scan to BIM solution. The big thing that I like about it, though, the big thing that I feel sets it apart is that it converts these scans to Revit parametric families. So this saves us modeling time. It gives us the accuracy of models to give us that peace of mind. And then parametric families can easily be modified in Revit. And I mean, by parametric, what I mean, let me go ahead and break that down for another second. is that, again, you're gonna see it knows exactly how high, how thick, and everything. When I go into edit type here, I can go ahead and adjust these. Now, I don't want to in this case, because this is the exact measurement that Edgewise gave me in terms of what size this column is. But again, if I need to make any small changes in terms of, you know, a base offset, if I need to make the column style change, if I know it's going to be a different type, this is great for conceptual, you know, but I need something tighter. Okay, I can do that very quickly and very easily within Revit. If I know that something is being added to this, I can go ahead and do that as well, just like with our piping systems. We all know that pipes have connectors, right, at the ends of them. Well, when they're brought in here, they have those natural pipe, the connectors. So even if you, let's say you have an addition of an existing system or going off of an existing system, we can connect those and get everything to read properly. If you're trying to pull your flow charts, you're trying to analyze the flow or the pressure drop, whatever it is, you can go ahead and utilize those, well, that functionality, those BIM tools, right? The capability or the power of the BIM tools there. All right. And again, we already kind of took those questions. So if we don't have any more, thank you all so much for your time. Again, I hope this was a beneficial webinar for you guys, which, speaking of, if you guys have any feedback, if any of you have any feedback in terms of you know, how we could make these webinars better, or what webinars you'd like to see, if you want to do deep dives, if you want to do, you know, Verity, if you want to do scanning, whatever it is you want to see, setups, or, you know, what have you, let us know. We enjoy making this content for you all, and you know, we're here to help, and if you can help us to help you, that'd be amazing. If you want to reach out to us, feel free. We info@topconsolutions.com, and for support related inquiries, contact support@topconsolutions.com.
And we do have one question here, David. So before officially closing out here, we received the following question. Can Edgewise put everything on the existing phase instead of new construction?
So that is actually a awesome question too. So currently, I don't think so. But what you would be able to do, yeah, I don't think so, because it's not giving that. What we would be able to do is, as soon as you bring all of these elements in, you just select them. And let me go with not selecting my levels there. So I just need to go through my filter. Right here, we could just hit that phase created and hit existing and then apply, and you've automatically changed all of those elements over to existing. All right.
Okay, and with that, it appears that we have no more questions.
All right, well, thank you again for your time, everyone. I hope that you have a great weekend.
Thank you, everyone.